John and Faye Ashton. This is Corky's sister and John Ashton. And of course, Nancy, Corky's wife, and our esteemed guest of honor is Corky Perret. We'll have a few more things to say about you. Then myself, I'm Larry Simpson, Executive Director of the Commission, and my wife, Pam, Marilyn Gautreaux, and then our chairman, Senator Butch Gautreaux of Louisiana. Senator Gautreaux, would you come up and just say a word of welcome to everybody before we get started?
Thank you, Larry. First of all, thank you very much for allowing me to be your chairman this past year. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Getting to know all of you has been a real pleasure, and even for Corky. And John and Faye, I just want to say that you're really good sports. You know, I understand you drew the short straw and had to represent the family. Corky and I actually met about 15 years ago when I was running for the Senate. The retiring Senator, John Syracuse, introduced us, who was a good friend of Corky's, serving on the Natural Resources Committee for a number of years. And but subsequently I was elected, and then I was put on this commission, and have gotten to know Corky very well. And the two of us share a love and respect for the culture and the economic importance of the fisheries, especially in the Gulf of Mexico. And we share friends, old and new. And I consider you my friends today. I'll miss my friend at these meetings, but I know I'll see him in the future, and I'm happy to be here to honor him today. Thank you.
Before we get my dessert off of my notes here, before we get started, and on a more somber note, do you have a table that you'd like to introduce, Mr. Perret? I mean, any of these friends, would you? Or you just want to wait a little bit?
Whatever way you want it, boss.
Why don't you mention your friends here at these tables?
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director. Complete surprise to me, but two of the individuals I grew up with in the very rural area of central Louisiana, and their wives showed up today. Glenn Goudeau, are you going to wave? And his wife, Jo, and Bobby Dupuy, and his wife, Victoria, who likes to be called Queen Victoria. And next to Queen Victoria is Dr. Charles Caillouette and his wife, Nancy. I was Charles's first graduate student.
And last?
And no, I think he had a few. And next to Nancy is Linda Rivette, who was a woman that had to put up with me for a lot of years in wildlife and fisheries in Baton Rouge. And there she is. And next to Linda is a friend from, we met in 1973, Roy Lipscomb. And interestingly enough, I got transferred to Baton Rouge. He got transferred to Baton Rouge. I come to Mississippi, and he's now got a place in Mississippi. So I don't know who's following who around, but we've been friends for a number of years. So I got friends at every table.
Well, we got to start somewhere. I don't know. Before we get started on the somber stuff, have a little presentation that we worked on for you, Corky. Y'all have seen the biography channel. Well, this is your life. William Stanley Corky Perret. Now, some of the things we're going to talk about, you know, he's getting up on age, you know, so some of these records are a little old. But we do have the official birth certificate of Corky Perret. There it is. You know, Corky has been, his whole career has been in fisheries, and he's created a lot of fish regulations and rules. You know, he's always been about rules. But he, you know, he was a friend of wildlife even back in his younger days. This carried him to south of the border to take up the cause of the great masses of the unwashed. And many of you didn't know this, but Corky was involved with Pancho Villa. But then he went to Bolivia for a little uprising down there and had to shoot his way out. But he settled down and he came back to the United States and did his military service. A long time ago. You know, then he finally went to college. He worked his way through college working at a golf course. Notice I said he worked his way to college and worked at a golf course. That's why he's not a very good golfer. But then came his radical phase. You know, he went to college and he started listening to all these liberals and so forth, and he kind of went off the deep end. And I have the unusual picture of that period of his life. Now, he was a little radical around the edges in college and so forth. That landed him a little time in jail. But oh, wasn't he a nappy dresser back then? Well, he went to the Merchant Marines for a little while, and this was a long time ago, so. That time on the water must have tainted him, because a little bit later in his life, he took up a life of crime. But it wasn't long after that he settled back down, and he finally went into his life as a marine biologist. Run, Forrest, run. Oh, that's it. Not many of you realize this, but Corky was the discoverer of the coelacanth back in 1939. He got a little bit into the wildlife area, and these are sandhill cranes. They had to quit letting him work with them because they couldn't tell which was the crane and which was Corky's legs. Philip Horn said to him one time when he wore shorts, he said, "Is that your legs or are you riding a chicken?" Now, many of you know this, but there is a picture, you know, of the signing of the Commission Compact, 1949, but not many of you realize Corky was there. His wisdom is renowned. He's been an advisor to presidents. He's been an advisor to vice presidents. I think he gave Vice President Cheney his hunter education course. I'm not sure. He's also been an advisor to vice presidential candidates and celebrities. But you know, seriously, he had a passion about the marine turtles. I don't know what caught his attention, but we went down in 1999 and he rode around down there, and I think he was the only one who saw turtles actually come up on the beach that year. He came back and Pat, they named them after, this was Corky's turtles, and we weren't real sure that they were in fact Corky's turtles, but Pat Birchfield brought back documented proof that they are Corky's turtles. And he just gave this picture to me, Corky, and I want you to have it. So they are your turtles. I know that they are. You like that, Pat? Now he went into a phase of his life can you just see that at Rancho Nuevo on the side of one of them buildings? He went into a phase of his life in which, he was an agent for these, he got wound up with the turtles and everything. Next thing you know, he's an agent for some of these celebrities. Not many people realize that this was one of his groups, that he even gave trips to the king, about how to dress and how to act on stage. Had another guy that he coached, Kanye West. This was a guy that interrupted Taylor Swift. Corky wasn't doing too a good job of taking care of his folks there. But anyway, this led him to, get awards, other awards, Academy Award. I don't know who that is, but I just thought it was a good picture. He was in the sports area. He was an advisor to Brett Favre. Now, you can tell these are not real pictures because look at that guy's legs. That's not his. But he advised Brett on, his retirement plans. And, so how many of you are Ole Miss fans out there? What's the difference in the Ole Miss and Brett Favre? Brett's still number 4. I couldn't help that. So he's advised him about when and how to retire. So is this the end? Or do we really know for sure? All foolishness aside, William Stanley Corky Perret graduated from Cottonport, Louisiana High School. He went on to get a Bachelor of Science degree, majored in zoology, minor in botany. Went on to get a Master of Science degree in zoology with a minor in fishery science and statistics. His thesis was occurrence and abundance of size and size distribution of fishes and crustaceans collected with otter trawls in Vermilion Bay, Louisiana. While he was at Southwestern Louisiana and Lafayette, he was a graduate assistant, research assistant. His first job, I guess, out of college was as a field biologist with the oyster and water bottoms in the seafood division. His primary research was on the cooperative Gulf of Mexico estuarine inventory study. He was later promoted to the project leader for a cooperative Gulf of Mexico estuarine inventory study, and also appointed as coordinator and administrator of the Seafoods Division Federal Aid Research and Development Program. Now, this is when I first met Corky in 1979 in New Orleans, 400 Royal Street. Later on, he was promoted to Assistant Secretary, Office of Coastal and Marine Resources. He was subsequently promoted to Marine Fisheries Division Administrator. All of this is under Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. Later, he was promoted to the Assistant Secretary of the Office of Fisheries. I don't know how many people in this room know, but I do, that he was offered the job as the secretary, and he recommended a person who's on this list because he thought that person had a little bit more time and experience. So he could have been the secretary. Then he came to Mississippi as director of Marine Fisheries Division, Director 1, then Director 2. And when he retired, he was the deputy director of the Department of Marine Resources. He's had over 50 publications. He was declared a fisheries scientist by the American Fisheries Society. He received the Louisiana Wildlife Biologist Association Publication Award for a paper he did on the GMEI. He was declared a member of the American Institute of Fisheries Research Biologists. He's received the Concerned Shrimpers of Louisiana Incorporated Fishermen's Award in appreciation for dedicated service to the Louisiana shrimping industry. He's received the Ray Robinson Award from the American Shrimp Processors Association in recognition and dedication and valued service to the shrimp industry in the Gulf of Mexico, United States. He has pretty much seen it all, heard it all, and experienced it all. I say this about very few people, but Corky's probably forgot more than most people will ever know about marine resources. You know, Corky, this is a pretty impressive list. If you look on the back, and Corky and I were talking about it, you got U.S. congressmen, and you got administrators. You know, you've got legends of recreational industry, legends of commercial industry. You got state folks. And Corky, you deserve to be on this list. And we're here today to honor you for that. Now, I want you to walk with me down here, and I got a little presentation, and then I'm going to walk back up here, and you got to sit down and be quiet for a little bit more. But come with me. Is this on? All right, bring it in. Oh, here it is, over here. Fool me. All right, now open this up. Yeah. Hold that. Corky, it's with great pleasure that we present the Charles H. Lyles Award, which is the only annual expression that the commission has to honor someone for their service. And it's a significant long-term service. And we've kind of changed it up a little bit. You know, we used to give some an Anderson print. Now we've changed it to this, and I think you'll be happy. Something that he's remarked about, and I hope you'll enjoy it and see the beauty of it. I'd like to present this to Corky Perret. All right, go ahead. This is presented to William Corky Perret, Gulf States Marine Fisheries Commission, Charles H. Lyles Award, October 13, 2009. These carvings, if you've driven down Highway 90, and the trees, the dead trees from Katrina, were cut off, and this man came by and he started carving these trees. And Corky remarked about how pretty they were, and so we thought this was an appropriate gift. So ladies and gentlemen, our Charles H. Lyles Award winner for this year, Corky Perret. Now you can't say anything. Come on. It ain't gonna fall. You afraid it's gonna fall? Yeah. He's afraid it's gonna fall. Yeah, he was step. He was afraid it was going to fall. Now, I promised a little time to John and others, and so I'm sure there'll be several people who want to say something, and we got a floating mic. But John, you want to come up and get us started with a few comments?
Yeah. It never ends. I noticed in the brochure that Corky has been in the fishing industry for 43 years, and most of you have known him for a good period of time. I've known Corky for 48 years, and he's a good friend. He's a great relative. I married his sister, and it's been a great marriage of 48 years. Corky thinks that when I tell people that the best thing that ever happened to me was going to Cottonport, Louisiana, it was because of him. But that's not true. Although I'm very fond of Corky, it's because of, obviously, his sister, my wife, who's Cottonport is a great place, and it must have been a great place to grow up in because there's a lot of super people from Cottonport, and I know two of them. Actually, I know more than two of them, but I'm very close to two of them. I wanted to come here. I came 4,000 miles to see Corky honored, 2,000 each way. I put on a sport jacket that obviously the last time I wore it was about 10 years ago, and they do shrink. So it's really great to be here. I met a lot of you last night. It was a pleasure meeting you. Corky is going to be hell to live with after this presentation. I'm very proud of him. We're all proud of him. And now I guess I'll bear the brunt of some sort of ribbing for the next 48 years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Anyone from the audience? Anyone from the audience, raise your hand. Stay at your seat. We'll bring the mic to you. Now, this is being videoed and so forth, so just say your name, Gary, for, of course, when he gets a little older, he won't remember, you know.
I'm Gary Graham of Texas Sea Grant. And I sat here and I was thinking about this association and the people of the past, and was actually thinking of being young once upon a time, and was thinking about icons that have come before us, icons like Lyles St. Lamont, Charlie Lyles, Ted Ford. Icons don't come along every day, you know, but I'm lucky to have got to meet those people and have memories of them. And Corky, I've already indicated at another presentation to you that I certainly believe that you're an icon. You're one of the characters that has come along in this industry that has had remarkable experience, remarkable principles. You believe in you know, you're steadfast to what you believe. You can't be swayed, you know, and I've always respected that. And for young people in this room, I hope that you will have someday the same feelings that I have about the icons that have come along, because Corky, having known him, will certainly fit into that category. But Corky, I appreciate your career. I want you to know that 15 years ago, me and a very close colleague almost made career-altering decisions, and you set us down and you talked to us, and that was Dave Harrington and myself, and I don't know if you remember that conversation, but you kept us from making a big mistake, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate our friendship. Thank you.
I'm Charles Kaiwet, and I first met Corky at University of Southwestern Louisiana in Lafayette. It's now University of Louisiana at Lafayette. And I noticed in the write-up about Corky, they mentioned ULL instead of USL. But I was told at this table, I learned for the first time, that he actually started at SLI, Southwestern Louisiana Institute. Is that correct, Corky? That adds a few years to his age. We're actually 5 years in age difference. I had just gotten finished with my education and went to USL, and Corky was there, and he was my first graduate student. He excelled while there. He went on to Wildlife and Fisheries, excelled there, and now he's shown to have excelled at Department of Natural Resources in Mississippi. Nancy and I are extremely proud of Corky, and just wanted to let him know that we're proud to be here and privileged to be here, and he certainly deserves a Charles H. Lyles Award.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Bob Zales II, and you all have heard this story probably before, but B.J. Putnam, which a lot of people in this room would know, when I first got involved in this fishery management system, sent me to a council meeting. It was in New Orleans, and told me to find 3 people, Wayne Swingle, George Brumfield, and Corky, because those would be the people that would help me the most to do what needed to be done. And Corky and I, when we met, we, I guess, became friends immediately, pretty much. Have been friends the whole time. We don't always agree on everything that's there. Pretty much we have, but there have been issues that we disagreed on. But through that whole time, Corky and I have remained good friends. And one thing that I can say, from my viewpoint anyway, what Corky's been, he's not only been an advocate for the resource, but he's also been a key advocate for the humans that enjoy that resource. And that's critical in this process, I believe. Thank you, Corky, and congratulations.
Anyone else?
Port and Lyles. Corky, as a public servant, never expected to be wined or dined. As a matter of fact, it's always the other way around. I remember when my son turned 16, Corky said, "Why don't we take him hunting?" So we went over to Corky's house at Slidell, went to the Sugar Shack out in the Biloxi marshes, and Corky proceeded to teach my son how to play boo-ray. And proceeded to let my son take his money and my money. We did go hunting the next day, and I don't know if this is a correlation or not, but my son has never hunted again, but he loves the casinos. Thank you, Corky. To the table from Cottonport, John, you mentioned Cottonport. I also have a love of Cottonport. Some years ago, Corky, again doing the inviting, asked Sarah and myself to attend a fete d'eau in Cottonport on Saturday. We arrived Friday night, went to this really nice party, and for some reason, everybody was all over me, asking questions. What do you do? How's this? Just rubbing up somebody from the Department of Economic Development, politicians. It was all night. I was absolutely worn out. The next morning I said, "Corky, I've never been to a party like that. Why did everybody pay so much attention to me?" And he looked at me and said, "Well, that's simple." I said, "What?" He said, "Well, I told them you were a big businessman from New Orleans. You were going to open a plant in Cottonport and employ 500 people." Thank you, Corky. And he was serious, too. I don't know, Glenn Godot, maybe you remember that. He's also been very practical. I think you were chairman of the TCC for about 20 years anyway. And a lot of times the March meeting always falls around St. Patrick's Day. So Corky, I, and others, after a night of debauchery at Mary Mahoney's, we'd ridden in my car, and I had to leave to go back to my office early. So, but this was before he met Nancy, so it's okay. I get back to my office, and I have this urgent message from my secretary. You got to call Mr. Perret. It's an urgent problem. And we didn't have cell phones back then. I don't remember just how I got in touch, but I know that within a half hour, he had dispatched a lieutenant from enforcement to drive all the way back to New Orleans to pick up his little black book, which he had left in the front of my car because the date he had arranged the night before and written her phone number down, it was in that book. And he had to keep things in priority. I've actually known Corky for 35 years. Or thereabouts, give or take. And I think there's 4 things I can say are always true of Corky. He's always prepared and knowledgeable about his subject. He's always honest. He's always very straightforward in what he tells you. And he's always a true friend.
Steve Heath, and I just wanted to get up as a representative of the younger folks that Corky's helped over the years. I can remember the very first Gulf Station Commission meeting that I went to. Hugh Swingle brought me over and dropped me into a room with Dr. Ford, J.Y. Christmas, Dr. Sanamon, and Dr. Charlie Lyles. And I was too naive to know exactly what rarefied atmosphere he dumped me into, and he just said, "Here's Steve Heath," and he walked out of the room. And we were trying to make up a shrimp management plan. And I looked around and I was delighted to see one person in the room that was somewhere near my age. And he was kind of clinging to Dr. Ford pretty tight at the time. But he's been a great friend over the years, and I really appreciate you, and you deserve this honor. Thank you.
Y'all willing to let him have the last word? Going once? Twice. Corky, you get the last word, my friend.
Larry, thank you. Thank the staff very much for that wise use of government time and effort putting that together. I'd hate to know how many hours went into that, but Senator Gautreaux, Marilyn, thank you, Pam, Larry, my sister, brother-in-law, and my wife. I guess I did that wrong. It should have been Nancy first. But I could say a lot of things. It's just unbelievable for me to think that I'm standing here today accepting this award, which is very, very humbling experience. First Gulf States meeting I ever made was in 1964 in October at the Broadwater Beach here in Biloxi with Dr. Caillouette, who brought some graduate students over. Charles got to stay at the Broadwater, and we graduate students stayed in one of those cheap motels, about 4 of us to a room, and we barely could afford that. But that was my first meeting, and I know I missed one meeting a few years after that due to some illness in the family, and I don't know if I've ever missed one since then. But I mentioned Linda putting up with me for years, Iris putting up with me for not quite as many years, and then when I got this last promotion, I guess I was such a pain, they had to give me two ladies to work with, Michelle and Evelyn, so thank you all, too, for putting up with me. The storm changed so many things. I basically lost everything. Sandra Horn gave me a place to live, and she'd feed me every night, and Philip would get mad because she'd call me to see what I wanted to eat, not him. But there were others in the department, Joe Jewell, Bill Walker, a number of people offered me a place to live. Sandra and Philip had this little cabin on the Pascagoula River that was sort of a retreat for me to get away, and they put up with me back there for months at a time. Larry mentioned me going into a governor's office and turning a job down. I wasn't too smart. I did. I went in and I told the governor, there's somebody else that probably would do a lot better job than me. I just didn't think I had enough experience at the time. The nice thing was we had a different governor 4 years later, and he offered me the same, and that new governor offered me the same job, and I was dumb enough to tell him, Governor, the press will never let you do this. And sure enough, I was right, so somebody else got it, but I got the assistant secretary's job, and they tried to run me away from that one. But anyway, that's all history. It's been an unbelievable career, absolutely unbelievable. Met some absolutely wonderful people, hardworking people for the most part, in and out of government. The experiences I've had, the people I've met, it's indescribable. I guess I was fortunate in a way. I was always, other than when I first started many years ago, I didn't really have the years I would have liked to have had at the fun level, the field biologists out in the field, out on the boats, doing your thing. I was always, anyway, I ended up in more the administrative end, but I was fortunate from that aspect, but I always missed the field work, and I still would love to get out with these guys here in Mississippi that are doing a great job, but unfortunately, this always seems to be something conflicting. I'm invited to a field activity here on the coast next week, and I'm going to be in Corpus Christi at a Gulf Council meeting, arguing, fighting over some fishery resource, I'm sure. A lot of the programs in government that a lot of you people in this room are working on and being funded by is through a lot of efforts by a lot of elected officials and appointed officials who went to bat for you. And I'm going to just tell one story. Larry spends a lot of time in Washington. I used to spend a lot of time in Washington. And one week we're up there and we're doing our lobbying why we need all this money for this program or that program, and lo and behold, an appointment is just announced. The new chair of the House Appropriations Committee is a Gulf Coast legislator. Boy, and Larry and I, we don't even have to exchange words. We know we're going to be in his office the next morning. We get an appointment, and away we go. And we're going to do our thing for Gulf fish and fisheries and all that stuff. Well, Larry's so much smarter than me. First thing he does, he puts his business card out. Now, here's a man who's chief of staff, I think he was, that we met with. But the congressman's the new head of House Appropriations. This man controls trillions, not even billions anymore, trillions. Larry puts his business card out, and the staffer says, the congressman doesn't believe in business cards. He thinks it's a waste of money. I thought, well, I guess we goofed this one up. So we do our thing, and as we leave, and the guy says, the congressman and I sure do like grouper. And we looked at each other, not a word said. We both knew Philip Horn's getting a call. So sure enough, we sent a darn box full of grouper from Mississippi, not from Mississippi grouper. That damn congressman never did a darn thing to help us. But anyway, somebody got grouper. On the last page is a picture. Some of you don't even know who these people are, but the one on the left is Mr. Charlie Lyles, who this award is named for. He got the award in '84, the first time it was given. Second gentleman to the left is Mr. J. Burton Angel, who got the award in '92 and probably was the closest thing I ever had to a second father. Mr. Angel, I had all the respect in the world for, and both of those gentlemen are deceased. And then the man on the right is Mr. Leroy Keefe, who got the award in '05, and Leroy is in Louisiana, and I used to have a lot of dealings with him also. As Larry said, the list of people that have received this thing is people that have, anyway, they were always on the front end on major issues, and I really appreciate the commission and this group honoring me with this award. Too many people to thank individually, but I'm going to tell one little story and sit down. And I'd been in Mississippi a couple of years and had asked a couple of the guys to do a little field job for us, and they did it, and they did it well. And I saw them one morning, and they both sitting in the audience. I saw them one morning, and all I did was say, thanks, y'all did a good job. And one of them looked at me and says, you know, Corky, I've worked for the state for about 13 or 14 years. It's the first time a supervisor has ever told me thank you. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is all of us that do our thing, we're only as good as the people we work with. We ought to all thank each other a lot more than we do, and because, you know, I've always, like I say, been at this level, but it's certainly any awards or anything I've accomplished, it's been because of the people that I work with and for. So thank all of you very much. I deeply appreciate the gift, and now you know why I brought my brother-in-law, because he can carry it. So, thank all of you very much.
Thank you all for attending. Appreciate your indulgence as we go through some reminiscing and times. We're dismissed. We go back to work at 1:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
You bet.
Let's see now. Hey, boy.
That was a great program.
You like that?
Really was.
Super, really.
You like that?
Yeah. It was excellent.